All right. Streaming in theory. Let's move this out a bit further. Let's go to where we need to go. Uh, where am I? Guess I have to go to channel. There we go. Mute myself. Edit video. Out here, live. Monetization on, though it's going to get kneecapped, theoretically. Instantaneously on detecting keywords. Oh, no, it's not. Interesting. I guess I've been dubbed not important enough to kneecap. Okay, live chat. Andrew's here as always. Josh should be streaming himself. So hopefully he actually doesn't show up because that would be that would mean he's not streaming. And my voice probably sounds a bit awkward at the moment. That's because I have tissues stuffed up my nose because I just got finished having the most massive nosebleed I've ever experienced in my life. Probably lost like, I don't know, 150, 200 milliliters of blood in that one. And I have never gotten a nosebleed without getting another one within 24 hours. So I don't know how soon that would occur. So if I suddenly say I need to go, it's because my nose started waterfalling blood again. So I apologize if that happens and I need to cut things short. But I'll see what I can do to avoid that. All right, Google Earth is up. Twitter is up. No, I'm not calling it X. Ooh, Amanur, the cat of Mongolia. On my profile, and we go to bookmark. Uh, just a gut feeling based on what the usual was uh versus me this time when I got this one. Like I'm not joking. Like it wasn't dripping and slowly coming out. Like it was actually like running and like a lot, like really fast. Like when I say waterfall, I'm not like exaggerating that. I mean it was like if I tipped my nose forward, it was like a like it was really thin, obviously, but it was like almost an actual stream, as opposed to just like drop, drop, drop. So uh, I don't know what's going on with that, but hopefully that doesn't restart. Let me chug some water. All right. Okay. In place. Thing I have stuffed in my nose with a new one. It looks like that's almost it. It almost completely stopped. As usual, sorry for not prefacing this earlier. For anyone who's just showed up, or sorry, I mean for anyone who is watching the recording afterwards, you can probably skip to like somewhere between 10 and 15 minutes because that's when I'll officially start. I'm still going to talk about and mention stuff in between now and then. No, please do not sneeze. This is not the time to sneeze. And as always, anyone who's not aware, you will find these if you go to the channel posts section of the channel. Come on, community. Sorry, it's under community. Excuse me. Scroll down. Under these, I usually post these links to these various things that I do, these different resources that I have for you guys in Google Docs. Like this one, the first one I started working on is maps of regions and countries. showing what areas have and have not been explored for oil and gas, shaded in red or pink, with gray being areas that could not geologically contain any oil or gas. And I've got most uh most like meaningful producers and regions on here so far. And then there's also the demographic overlays and the latest one that I just introduced you guys to, the one of the graphs I've made of the remaining in-ground reserves of different resources over time, with some being excluded. Obviously, I mentioned those like salt, sulfur, iron, and magnesium because they're effectively limitless. But yeah, you can see which ones like have, despite our exploration and resource-based expansion efforts, been depleting over time, versus which ones have expanded in available remaining resource or reserves over time, and which ones have been relatively like flat or level. I've got 20 pages, so 20 out of I think 40 like critical minerals and metals on that one. And then the demographic overlays are a bit more tedious. Again, I have to like copy by hand, basically switching between tabs, the data from the like data sheets of different countries, because they're not set up in a way you can copy directly to an Excel sheet. And the ones that are in a protected doc, kind of like I have most of these sets to where you can't actually like copy it directly. So I have to switch back and forth between tabs, tediously hand copying it. But I've done 32 countries so far of these, where I show the number of births, obviously in millions, over time, and contrasted, overlaid with the number of deaths plus or minus migration. So mass death events like COVID here for Indonesia will give you a big spike. Mass migration outwards will give you a big spike like back in the 70s for them, or mass migration inwards like you'll see in some other cases for some countries. Let me find one where that happens. Mass migration inwards. Yeah, like here for Turkey, that sudden dip in was from the massive influx of Syrian refugees. So the red one is the one that will be affected by migration. And these are basically so that you can see where they are in relation to each other, how close they are to converging, or in some cases, like say Japan and China, when they already converged. So I got all of those, the maps, the depletion graphs, so to speak, as well. So I've got all that stuff built up, and I am working on a third doc for you guys, or sorry, a fourth one of a different kind, and a fifth one that I'll eventually give you guys access to once I have enough to feel justifying it. Sorry, let me get this a bit closer. Okay, we got Google Earth up. We got my bookmarks up. We have what else do we need? What else do we need? Let's get, I guess, yeah, I'll just have a general Google page open to like look up images of different weapon systems for you guys, I guess. Uh, oh, there, that's what I'm forgetting. That's what I'm forgetting. We need this open so I can go through like the different progression maps to show you involving like, what some countries with some rulers desire to have that play into our run through of like worst possible scenarios. And I should rip this sheet out of my notebook so I have this ready. Come on. All right. Got that ready. Oh, yeah. I forgot to tell you guys about that one. So, we'll probably start right after this. Yeah, we're close to 10 minutes. So, where is it? It's in here in stream regular one, stream one. Is it 8? No, that's the birth rate stuff. That's natural gas. Forgot what that was. That's the depletion stuff. Isn't it 4? Yes, it's in 4. Okay, so these are the graphs that I started making showing like the individual bi-monthly fluctuations in countries' oil demand levels. Since a lot of you guys were constantly asking me to do that, because the graphs I normally used in the oil demand videos are the yearly averages over time. So because the yearly averages go back way longer, I will still use those, but for half the time that a country's oil demand level is being mentioned in the oil demand videos, I will show the long-term yearly average and then the more recent last 30 years or so individual fluctuations one that I have made. Also because the long-term ones, as you guys, pointed out, I was already aware, I promise. A lot of them, that site stopped updating them at like 2018 for some reason. No, I don't know why. Putting data into Excel is tedious, but it's not difficult. Where's one that I can point out to you guys? One that I can point out. Come on, where are they? Oh yeah. Here, for example, Brazil. So I was able to find a way, all the annoying countries, as I phrased it, like Brazil, now they've joined the list of annoying countries, but that list also includes countries like uh, Malaysia, for example, and countries like Argentina, various, countries, large consumers, Iran as well, who don't publish their consumption data. I was able to find a way around that. It involves me having to do like a lot of math back and forth, counterbalancing oil production, then with net exports and imports, and then with net oil products exports and imports. But I found a way to get around it, so I can actually discern the data now. So as I said in that one post, threateningly, you cannot hide your data from me. It's a futile effort. You cannot hide it. I will get a hold of it somehow. And so like there you see that was this summer, just a few months ago, when Iran broke their oil consumption record domestically, got up to 2.3. Some of the others, Kazakhstan, I was able to get. I made their shading for their graph the same. So okay, stream is still working. I don't know what it's popping up with stuff for. Can we get my folders back up, please? Thank you. All right, so that should be it. We're going to go ahead and start now. We've dropped 3 people anyways, but just like just like on Patreon, we've lost 3 people over the last 2 weeks, ever since the Israel stuff started. I mean, that's no real surprise. By all means, I expected something like that to happen. Thankfully, they were only like $1 contributors for the most part. But anyways, so I posted that thing yesterday, telling you guys that I was postponing the stream to today. And I was postponing that because up there in Lebanon, the uh, leader of Hezbollah was going to give like a speech with the Grand Imam of Iran who flew in for it. Not the Ayatollah, he doesn't leave his bunker, but the Grand Imam of Iran came in for the speech, and they hyped it up real big. So I was expecting, this might be an it moment. This might be them like announcing, like grand ultimate Giga Chad jihad, and declaring trying to do an all summons buster call of all like basically they would phrase it as all true Muslims come and join the Islamic Revolution militia and come invade Israel. But it ended up not being the case, which is good. I kind of prayed that wouldn't be the case because that would That would be the start of a grand cataclysm for the region and mass death. And because of the potential, disruption of oil outflow from the region to the rest of the world, that would also then proceed into like global events of mass death because of like agriculture failures from lack of fertilizer and lack of fuel for agriculture vehicles in countries that are entirely dependent on oil imports from the Middle East for the most part, like say India right next door, or China, who is 77% dependent on imported oil. So that did not happen, thankfully. He gave kind of a weird speech. It was mostly just like a threat speech about like you haven't seen anything yet. So I'm assuming they're still gonna like start doing more stuff and start escalating, but they didn't do like grand ultimate jihad declaration. So unfortunately, it looks like I postponed the stream until today for nothing, so I do apologize for that. But anyways, so I guess we'll start with the whole Israel Middle East situation. Uh, Rapid recap for anyone who is not aware. Back on October 7th, Hamas did a mass infiltration of Israel. Uh, they killed about 1,400 people. It was done by about 2,500 Hamas militants that infiltrated Israel. About 1,500 of them were then killed in combat with both regular police and the IDF. So about 1,000 returned to the Gaza Strip after it, and they took like 500 hostages or something with them. So Israel's civilian casualties stopped at about 1,400. Israel then, despite what people, have left my Patreon over trying to insist is not the case, Israel started essentially just mass indiscriminately bombing the northern Gaza Strip. That's what it is. Just accept the reality. Stop trying to hero play your favorite side. So have they killed Hamas members in those strikes? Yes. They've also killed around 10,000 regular non-Hamas people, but no one seems to value their lives all that much. So there's also 2,000 people missing, listed as under rubble, which essentially that just means they're dead. So it's actually about 12,000. And then there's about 20,000 people in need of critical surgery and medical care. However, only 100 have been allowed out so far. So best estimation is those 20,000 people in need of urgent care, if they are not actually let out, are going to be dead within a month. So unless they leave, that's going to end up as a total civilian death toll of, including the people listed as missing under rubble, around 32,000 thus far. In terms of like engagements, totally thus far, Hamas has, including the 1,500 initially killed on that one day in those engagements, and now in the incursions by the IDF into the Gaza Strip, Hamas is now estimated somewhere between 2,000 and 2,500 Hamas fighters killed out of roughly 40,000 estimated. They don't like, obviously publish their roster of, listed fighters, so we don't know really for sure. But it's estimated by various intelligence agencies, probably roughly around 40,000. And so they're at about between 2,000 and 2,500 of those dead. IDF casualties are somewhere between 350 and 400 out of, since they're all combat troops, uh, out of the casualties at least. I think there's been a few non-combat troops, but most of the IDF casualties have been combat troops. So between 350 and 400 IDF combat personnel out of, in terms of combat personnel, what the IDF has, something like 160 or 170,000 in total personnel. including all the guys they've called up. They have around 630,000. But again, most militaries, it's not just the IDF or not just the US, not just Russia. Most militaries in general are like between 15 and 25% of the troops are an actual combat force. The rest are, uh, functionality troops and role filling troops. So the casualty ratio of IDF versus Hamas is about what you would expect it to be. It's pretty lopsided, like between 5-1 and 6-1 in the IDF's favor. Uh, it's been it's been less in their favor in the Gaza Strip, obviously, now that they're actually like engaging in urban combat, because urban combat is not like the best thing. Obviously, it's kind of a nightmare scenario. And the areas where they initially engaged on the first day of the incursion on October 7th, and then the second day, you can see the areas, and my mouse cursor is frozen. Well, anyways, without me circling them, you can still see the areas outside here are a lot less dense. They're a lot more open. So it was a lot of like open fieldish kind of stuff. Whereas now, Gaza is obviously very urbanly dense, as you can see from satellite imagery. So that's a lot tighter. So the ratio is less favorable there, but it's still what you would expect. Let me go down to here we go. So I have not gotten the map from today, but this is the map thus far, and you can see in comparison to the satellites, obviously. So this is like Gaza City, and then Jabalia up here. So that's what we're looking at. And the blue is the IDF incursions into Gaza as of, uh, well, technically as of 2 days ago, because the maps update 1 day behind. And so thus far, at least up until then, they had not yet fully entered Gaza City, except for right up here, although that's technically Jabalia, I believe. So they'd been going into what inside of Gaza are still kind of open fields to do an initial like encirclement. And that is now completed. Wait, did I download a November 2nd map? Okay, I did actually. Okay, so as of yesterday, they had gone up to here and throughout here. And as of today, they were moving along the beach right here. And I believe also over here, where this is still fields, they were moving to meet these two uh, control areas up with each other. Before I started stream, I had not yet seen a updated map. But as of the last that I was looking at operational developments, they had not yet met each other. Either of these two intended convergences had not yet met up with each other. But so that is how it stands within Gaza thus far. And it turns out also, to the surprise of hopefully no one, they said they were only going to do North Gaza stuff. That was a lie. They're going into southern Gaza as well, only in these areas thus far. Seemingly random, not entirely. I would imagine this here, they're going to like thrust up like that and then sort of close off and encircle this area as well. And then this swoop up through like there and like do the same thing with, that area. But that is how that stands as of the moment. And as of the like armaments and stuff, the like ratio exchanges, thus far, we have, where is it? We have Hamas has fired 16 or 17,000 rockets out of, I was initially incorrect. It turns out they at least most likely have about 30,000, and they fired between 16 and 17,000 of them. I think it was like 4 to 5,000 of those were on that first day as a shock value. And Hezbollah has now fired uh, close to 4,000 out of a much larger arsenal of 150,000. And the Islamic Revolution over in Syria has not fired rockets because they don't have rockets. They have mortars, like basic, 60 millimeter, I think is the regular, like standard basic mortar. They've been primarily firing mortar shells randomly. So that is what's coming on their end. And what else is on the sheet here? Okay. And about uh, around 100 Hezbollah and Islamic Revolution fighters have been killed because, again, they've been sort of holding off like a full engagement for the time being. And in terms of numbers, Hezbollah has about 100,000. At least that's what general intelligence seems to believe. And the Islamic Revolution now has about 40,000 in Syria. They were only around like 10 to 12,000 initially. However, since since the Gaza bombing began, Iran and Hezbollah have paid for flights and shuttle buses to bring in like militia volunteers from all over the place, like as far away as Pakistan, for example. And those numbers have gotten up to about 40,000. However, they've kind of leveled off there. So it's not like an infinite surge like initial fears thought it might end up being. Although there is like a section of the group staying in Iraq and launching random attacks against U.S. bases, and a lot of the stuff gets intercepted by AD systems. A lot of it does impact. However, there's been a real inconsistency in the quality of the suicide drones as to like whether they end up actually detonating on impact or not. So they're clearly the suicide drones being used by the IR in Iraq are clearly like self-made or homemade ragtag stuff. I initially thought when those reports first came out of the first strikes, I thought they were actually using like Iranian Shahed drones, which are actually really reliable. However, it looks like that's not the case. They're using just like regular self-made quad rotor suicide drones. So they're not making like successful quote unquote progress with those. If they actually got Shahed drones somehow, that would be a much different story. Though those are bigger targets and much easier seen. So like the CIWS systems on the bases would much more easily pick up and shred those. So that might also be the reason why they're not using those, because the regular homemade quad rotor drone stuff obviously is kind of too small to show up on a radar, so it's not really going to get picked up. Mortar shells and rockets that they've also fired, those do show up on the AD detection system and then get shredded or in some cases intercepted. And also, we have the Houthis down in Yemen who have joined the fight from a distance. They do have cruise missiles from Iran, and they had about 350, of which they have fired a dozen or so, and two have made it all the way up. One ended up crashing somewhere in southern Israel near their ports. I forgot the name of their ports on the Red Sea there. Eliot, I guess, is that one. So one did crash or impacted and did explode near Eliot, but it damaged an empty structure, if I recall. And another one ended up landing somewhere in Jordan and did not harm anyone, thankfully. The others were all intercepted by either in the air by IAF F-35s or were intercepted. The first four that the Houthis launched were intercepted by a U.S. anti-air destroyer with anti-air missiles, and a couple have been intercepted over Saudi Arabia by Saudi Arabian systems. And also, the Houthis have upsurged, they've done a sudden upsurge in their border clashing engagements with the Saudis, and 4 Saudi soldiers have been killed over the last couple weeks. So Saudi Arabia is now probably going to go on another hospital bombing rampage, since that's their typical reaction to stuff, as they're kind of secretly aware internally that their military kind of sucks, and the only thing they're really capable of is bombing hospitals. But that is how those stand so far. So in theory, the Houthis then have like 340 of those Iranian cruise missiles left. What's like course they intend to take from there with those, not certain. I'm not certain. Like, I mean, obviously, if they launched like a larger barrage of them, they could probably get past some stuff with a few. But I'm not sure what their launching capabilities are, like how many they could actually launch at a time, because the largest like collection of launches they seem to have done so far is the 4 launched at once on the first time that got intercepted by that anti-air destroyer. So as as far as I know, they can launch 4 at once. Whether they can launch more, I don't know. I wouldn't like exclude it from the realm of possibility. It would be unsafe to exclude it from the realm of possibility. In terms of Israel, the Iron Dome system relies on Tamir interceptors, and each Iron Dome battery, they're like scattered around different places. Each Iron Dome battery will contain, or each battery launcher, sorry, will contain 20 at a time. And totaled up all the different batteries, the entire system across the country will be holding 1,200 interceptors inside of it at any given time. Now, the entire system was expended within the first week, and another round of 1,200 interceptors was expended uh, within a short time afterwards. As of now, we are somewhere around 3,500 interceptors expended, and some people are claiming 20,000 for some reason, but they're a bit off with their math. They're probably assuming that the system intercepts literally every single rocket that's fired, but it doesn't. The system calculates the trajectory of the rockets, and so if it calculates it's going to like land up here in the mountains or in some empty field, it will not launch an interceptor. Now, if it calculates it's going to actually hit somewhere, then it will launch an interceptor. And these rockets obviously are unguided, so they're not like going into a specific target points. They are like Hamas does do like angular calculations to try to generally aim at the arcing curve towards like a specific city or area, but it's still unguided. So most of them are calculated to like not be likely to hit anything, so they don't get intercepted. But anyways, the point being, we are at about 3,500 interceptors expended out of what is a likely grand total of probably only 10,000 or so, which is less than I thought, as I assumed that, because my assumptions are always like, okay, I'm the decision maker. What would I do? Uh, I assumed Israel would want to have like, something like between 10 and 20,000 spare interceptors on hand. Turns out they probably only have or had between 6 and 8. Then plus 2,000 that the U.S. Keeps on hand to ship over to Israel at any given point, which we have now shipped those extra 2,000 over. So it looks like the end total was actually only about 10,000, out of which 3,500 have been expended. And I said from the start, I think if there is some like broader plan, it's to have Hamas like eventually expend its entire rocket arsenal, while Hezbollah also like casually expends some gradually, and like a collective aim would be to probably try to wear the system down, deplete it of any mass amount of spare interceptors, And then at a later point, Hezbollah would actually do a larger version of what Hamas did on day one and launch like a mass barrage of rockets. So instead of Hamas launching like 4,000 on day one, Hezbollah would launch like, I don't know, say 10,000 or 15,000 on Hamas day zero, we'll call it, or sorry, Hezbollah day zero, if this were to occur in the way that I would, suspect someone would be planning it. But when I suspect people are planning things, it also often turns out that no one's really actually planning or thinking about anything. So we'll see what actually happens with that. And in terms for production rate for the Tamir interceptors is about 600 per month when the factories are running. And I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and assuming that the factories have kind of been switched on by now and are going to start pumping interceptors out. So, from what is my mouse cursor doing? From here on, starting, this month, we'll say from here on, they will be gaining a additional 600 interceptors per month. So for the rest of this month, we'll go ahead and throw an extra 600 onto that 10K because, even if they keep up the expenditure thing of trying to deplete the system, it would still take at least to the end of this month to get to that 10K. So we'll say 10.6K net total interceptors for the Iron Dome system. And vehicles, there's no vehicle losses on Hamas's side because Hamas doesn't have combat vehicles. Uh, However, on the Israeli side, they are now at, as of pushing into the Gaza Strip recently, 9 tanks either lost or significantly damaged. Two, after I saw like the combat footage, two of them are only like damaged, as in they can probably be repaired and returned to service within the usual Western Standard 2 months I give. So those will be back in service theoretically by January. But in total, so 7 lost, 2 majorly damaged or moderately damaged. So in total, at least for the time being, 9 tanks out of action. Out of they have 490 when this all started, at least, of their modern Merkava tanks, plus an extra 220 off models in storage. So when I say off models, I don't mean ancient useless trash like Russia has that they've been, increasingly resorting to, like ancient stuff from the 50s and 60s. I mean, like slightly older, less advanced models of the Merkava tank, like from the 80s or early 90s. So they do have an extra 220 off models, at least, that I know that they could bring into service if they want. As of the moment, though, they have 9 of their active duty 490 tanks out of action, and 2 of their Namer uh, infantry fighting vehicle slash armored assault vehicle, which I believe is the one that's similar to the Striker. Hold on. Israeli Namer. Oh, there we go. IFV. No. Okay, that's more like a Bradley, but with a much smaller turret, it looks like. Yeah, that's a lot closer to like a Bradley than a Striker. Okay, so that's a Namir, and they are at they've lost 2 of those out of, I do not recall the total off the top of my head. They've also lost 2 Wolves, which are uh basically these large hold on, where is it? US MRAP. That should bring up. They're yeah, they're big things like this. With instead of a manned turret, obviously this is an older photo. They have, the auto turret thing that you control with like a joystick from the inside. But the Wolf is something like this. They have 300 of those. They've lost 2, and they have 48 Apache attack helicopters, of which 5 are currently out of service. They are not destroyed. 4 during that first week, during those early response engagements, were damaged by ground fire, and a 5th was as well a couple weeks later. those initial 4 will be back in service sometime next month in December. That 5th one should be fixed and back in service by January. There is an actual risk of them getting potentially like losses in that regard, though. Let me see if I can find it, because as it turns out, we thought they didn't, but they actually do. Hamas, turns out, they're older Soviet systems, but they still are a thing. Hamas actually does have manpad, shoulder launched anti-air launchers, as was found out a couple days ago when helicopters were providing some ground assistance cover fire. They did detect themselves getting locked onto, and so they actually had to start dropping flares. So turns out Hamas actually does have like actual manpads, not just RPGs, but actual like ones that can lock on. So there is a potential some of those might end up getting shot down, but we'll see how that all develops. And I think that's it for the like tally rundown. So then we will have to go into we'll go into like a general thing after I check chat at least. And oh, well, there is no chat to check apparently. All right, so let's see. What do I have on the bullet points? Already did the Houthis. Already did the man pads. The major announcement. Uh, the what do we have? Oh yeah. So also, various countries are also kind of using this as like a slight budget savings measure. It doesn't, shutting down your embassy and like recalling your ambassadors doesn't really like affect anything. But it is a way to like cut back on your budget. So various surrounding countries like uh, Bahrain, Jordan, uh, I think one of the I can't remember which North African nation, but then also over in South America, Bolivia, Chile, and Colombia did as well. And one other country that I don't recall just did so today, but several have been like cutting off ties. They've been shutting down like their operations and recalling their people and stuff from Israel, which is not really going to do anything, obviously, but it is like a convenient, sudden, excuse for them to be able to save like a little bit of cash. Well, and speaking of cash, so Israel has actually like fully admitted to the whole, ethnic cleansing thing of actually wanting to just expel the Gazans. And I did get a snap of that from the AP article, I think. Yeah, so it was the idea is they want to basically quote unquote transfer them to the Sinai Peninsula, and they have they've Egypt doesn't really want the Palestinians, so Israel came up with a new idea recently of okay, what are you doing, mouse cursor? What are you doing? Of trying bribery. They've offered to pay Egypt indirectly by paying off Egypt's IMF debt of about 13 billion. So they're offering to pay Egypt to take the Palestinians, which Egypt has turned down. Obviously, that's not the 13 billion isn't really like that, you know, big of a bribe offer to suddenly take on an additional like 2.3 million people. So, you're gonna have to like offer a bigger bribe than that for that deal to go through. Uh, what else was there? Uh, Hold on. Let me check. Oh, yeah. Then there's also that stuff, but that is stuff we'll get into for the like worst case, scenario thing that we're gonna do later in a little bit. So let me chug some water, and then we will have a look at the Ukraine-Russia current situation. We'll look at some other stuff real quick, and then we'll go into like, what is the worst case possible down spiral this could go into. Since everybody, everybody annoyingly, obnoxiously uh, keeps saying literally every time anything happens, people come out of the woodworks on Twitter to like spam the comments section with "It's World War III, it's World War III." It isn't. It could be. Could turn into it. And like the invasion of Poland, if it does turn into it, then yes, officially we would his historically like forward from now we would recognize February 24th of last year as the official date that World War III would have began. But it's not in that kind of scenario yet. It would take a lot more. I mean, history might reclassify things like later on, like, in the time when things were happening, we didn't like declare this is, World War X. Uh, X being the substitute, not Elon Musk's kind of, futuristic X, but that was a later reclassification for a decent chunk of each one, both the first one and the second one. It was just it was just like a common understanding thing of we're in a massive global war, and then during the second one, like later on during the second one, we eventually like came up with that bimodal designation thing. But anyways, so in Ukraine, the frontline situation remains mostly the same, except for perhaps the puncture area where Ukraine did punch through that 2 mile thick minefield and the Russian defense line system behind it. They were able to gain some additional ground recently with like 1 kilometer spike outwards west and and another kilometer spike outwards east. And that was because Russia stalled in a day. They had a you know logistics failure slash brain failure, and were unable to get enough replacement SPGs, enough replacement artillery up there in time to match the daily loss rate of it, in order to maintain their firing rate, which is the primary thing that's been actually holding everything back. So right around here, uh, Russia again built a 2 mile thick north to south minefield, and beyond that, they have their defensive line system, which I think you could even start to. I don't know if that is it. I don't know how recent this like Google Earth image is, but it's right around that general area. And then in front of it, there was a 2 mile thick minefield. But in early September, Ukraine finally had broken through the minefield and then reached the Russian defense line system just beyond it. And Russia has then since held them from actually like pushing in and then causing a line collapse, obviously, that would follow by rushing frantically as many SPGs, modern artillery systems, self propelled guns such as the M109 Paladin. Obviously, this isn't Russia's. This is ours. This is for the U.S. But this is what we're referring to. Things like this. So Russia has been constantly racing as many as they can up there, surrounding the breach area and maintaining a like constant rate of fire of artillery shells that has been thus holding the Ukrainian forces from being able to push further than that. And they're burning through their pool of it because they are losing artillery in the process of that. Because as they bring this stuff up, again, they are desperate to just maintain this rate of fire. So they're not like concerned with taking time to like try to camouflage stuff, hide it in trees, put nets over it, position it like in like the best possible area. They're just rushing it up and starting firing as soon as they can to try to continue to contain everything. And so they've been burning through that artillery pretty fast. And they had lost 400 or so SPGs before that frontline breach happened. Since it happened about 2 months ago, they've lost an additional 200. So 50% of what they've lost through the entire year and a half of the war up until that, they've now lost in just the last 2 months because, again, they're just frantically throwing it as fast as possible up to try to keep this contained. And their SPG confirmed visually losses are now in excess of 600 out of supposedly 1,600. However, again, let me flip this over. Again, I discussed in a previous stream, Russia's actual numbers are starting to be called into question because their military budget is only between 60 and $80 billion a year. Yet they claim and have always claimed to, you know, have as much, if not more, of insert vehicle type here than the U.S. and to have them constantly, epically, completely maintained, better than the U.S. and all the stuff is more advanced and everything. But those numbers don't match. Uh, you know, if you did have that, you would also have a $700 billion per year military budget like the U.S. does. Now, if you want to make the argument that Russia's budget is less because they can pay their soldiers less, that is true. So we'll chop the entire U.S. salary portion of the budget off, which is about 160 billion out of that 700 billion is used to actually pay U.S. servicemen. So let's chop that off. You would still need $540 billion a year, even if you were paying your personnel $0. So no, Russia's max estimate of $80 billion per year does not match their quoted numbers of strength. So we have seen this also happening with like other types of vehicles. We've actually seen the number questioning starting to manifest in reality. But before we get to that, here along the Dnipro, Ukraine has made 3 river crossings and established some points, staying back in the muddy, like shore section of it, which has kept the artillery from being able to actually like dislodge them because the artillery shells go into the mud. They're not for one. Again, as you may be aware, Russia is now having to rely on old artillery shells it gave North Korea generations ago back in the Soviet times. So if Russia had quote unquote smart shells that could, detonate, that had like, a detection system up front and could detonate at a specific altitude, it's no longer using them because they expended those already. Now they're relying on old 50s and 60s shells from North Korea. So the shells are just impact shells and they hit and sink into the mud by like a few feet at least before they detonate. And then the mud kind of absorbs a huge amount of the blast. So it's not really effective. Uh, the river crossings themselves also aren't like a massively effective thing, but that's not their point. Their point, at least in my estimation, is to do exactly what they have been doing, which is diverting Russian artillery attention over to them and thus lessening the total available pool of stuff that can continually be raced up to fill the frontline breach. And so there's around 10 or so SPGs uh, near each river crossing point that are trying to hammer those positions and dislodge the Ukrainian forces that landed there. And it's not working, like I said, but the Ukrainians also aren't advancing beyond the river shore. And again, I at least expect that's like part of the plan is they don't really intend to. And I wouldn't be surprised if they like make like a fourth and a fifth crossing sometime soon to again draw even more like diverted artillery attention over to along the river. So that's 600 SPGs that have been destroyed, and an additional 30 that are like dedicated elsewhere along the river, plus whatever amount are like dedicated elsewhere just in general along the front. So I'm only going to count those 30 and assume that is 630 non-available systems now that cannot be used to maintain this rate of fire to keep this push from actually going in. So that's 630, with 600 of those being actually destroyed systems out of supposedly 1,600. But we'll see whether that actually turns out to be the case, whether that 1,600 number is real. Now, Russia has finally, after almost 2 years, managed to manufacture some new SPGs. They've manufactured a whole somewhere between 4 and 16 of them in 2 years. And supposedly those will be delivered from the manufacturer to the military soon, but we'll see whether that actually manifests. And then here, over in the Donetsk Oblast, we have the infamous Avdiivka area, which has been a relentless slaughterhouse. So Russia has been, or at least in the earlier stages, was when the most massive waves were. They've kind of run out of steam with that now. They're down to like 3 waves per day, as opposed to the first week they were doing like a dozen waves a day. But they've been doing waves each day of like dozens of vehicles, along with hundreds of dudes in each wave, throwing it around and towards Avdiivka, trying to seize the city and the surrounding area. And it has not really been working out. It's uh, it's resulted in somewhere between 250 and 300 vehicles destroyed and around 6,500 dead dudes. So it is in terms of like KDR ratios, Ukraine versus Russia, Avdiivka has produced the highest lopsided ratio against Russia out of anything in the war. This is where like this is where the pro gamer MLG Call of Duty like uh uh nope 360 no scopers are. Not really. It's mainly Ukrainian artillery just like hitting the vehicle columns as they're advancing, causing those vehicle columns to then blow up because Russia doesn't practice separation doctrine. Their vehicles, uh, anyone who anyone who's been in a military probably knows that, like in a convoy, you don't ride bumper to bumper. In case a vehicle gets hit, you don't then immediately crash into it, or the explosion doesn't then catch your vehicle and light you up too. Russia doesn't practice that apparently. Like their tanks and stuff are just like front to end with each other, and so there have been quite a number of like 2-for-1s that have like gone off in some of those columns. And as I've always said, they're not in my bookmarks because then you would end up seeing them. And I can't, for one, I can't show that on stream because it's against YouTube TOS. And also, I consider that against like my own morality to show you literal fields of dead bodies and like I'm not even joking, like dismembered bodies. And there's like dudes in some of the overhead like drone footage and some of the still shots. There's literally dudes out there. They're like cut in half by explosions, and like part of their spine is hanging out. So The stuff is out there if you want to like go searching for it and see it. It is there. Like personally, for your own soul, I don't recommend it. But you know, if you like want to visually confirm for yourself what I'm saying, yes, it is out there. You can go see it. Uh, you will be watching like a lot of the moment of multiple people's deaths, and you'll also be looking at like actual like piles of human corpses in many cases. But it is there if you do want to see it. I didn't tell you to zoom in. Excuse me. What are you doing? Mouse cursor. What are you doing? Obey me, mouse cursor. Obey me. Do not make me get an actual physical mouse out. I will get a physical mouse and plug it in. Yeah, see, that threat works. That threat always works. You fear the actual physical mouse. And so that has all been failing. And so to try to compensate for that, Russia has tried a few other things in a few other places. They've tried a big wave assault in Marinka. That didn't work out. They tried in, where is it? Their favorite place. There it is, Volhedar. That's one of their favorite places where they did something similar to this back in winter of this year, and it ended the same way. They tried Vuhadar again today. It ended the same way. So this is, as I expressed before, and as I expressed in that write-up, this is expressing a level of desperation that they are probably internally aware that, for all intents and purposes, the game is up. And like the moment they can no longer maintain this artillery rate of fire on this breach in their lines, they will then suffer a line collapse. And so to try to pull something off before that happens, they're doing these massive death wave attacks to try to let me get the maps up here. Downloads. Are they still down here somewhere? Don't tell me I relocated them. Oh, I didn't. Excellent. Um, what the? Oh, yeah. Okay. So this is like where it stands occupation wise and stuff. And that breach up there that has expanded a bit west and east because of their 1 day gap, failing to get like enough replenishment SPGs up there for 1 day 2 days ago was enough to like allow for additional like 1 kilometer pushing. So it is clearly this curtain, this like rain curtain of artillery fire is all that's actually restraining this. And they are seemingly aware of that because now they're doing what I assume is a desperate attempt, expending all available vehicles and lives possible to try to seize the remaining quarter of Donetsk Oblast. So, in other words, to do this, which, if they succeeded in doing this, that would give them a domestic at home excuse they could, use to uh, do the standard like post post Chechnya, post Afghanistan declare victory, and you know claim that oh liberating quote in quotation marks Luhansk and Donetsk as they refer to them, the LPR and DPR, was actually the real goal all along, and now we've succeeded. Therefore, we can go home and end the war. And in this scenario of theirs, they would then willingly withdraw from Kherson and Zaporizhia, instead of experiencing a line collapse. And the illusion wouldn't last very long because Ukraine wouldn't stop. They're going to keep reclaiming their homeland. So, I mean, it would last for like a few weeks probably, but then it wouldn't. But they kind of desperately are hoping that it would. And the reason like they're going for it like right now is I don't no, I don't think that they're like on the verge of expending all their SPGs like immediately. I don't think I do think, all of their various like vehicle numbers in terms of what they have are lies. They are inflations, but they're not like enormously inflated. Like they don't only have say 700 when they claim 1600. It's probably something like they only have 1200 or 1300 when they claim 1600. So they could keep this going for a little while, or they could have kept this going for a little while without doing these like mass death charges over here. However, there's also then another aspect to add into that, and that is that Putin is, starting his re-election campaign again with election in quotation marks there. He's starting his campaign soon. He's going to make his announcement that he's running for president in a fair competition again soon. This sometime this month, I believe, he's going to hold his first like re-election rally, and he probably like told them to try this earlier because he would probably want this to happen like before he even starts his campaign. Not that he like stands a chance of losing, but he probably would have wanted this to happen before he even started his reelection campaign. Not that it would have succeeded in actually like happening, but after that, like at the very least, he probably also wants this something like this to happen before the election itself, uh, because then if public opinion is like not all that much with him, which he's actually been steadily losing after a lot of this started, and also now because Russia critical like daily needs supplies have been like going through rapid inflation in Russia, especially fuel prices, because of various conflicts between government orders and what the Russian oil companies want to do. So there's been like rapid price rises, especially in fuel prices, which has not really been the best for public opinion. Again, not that he cares, but dictators in most cases still do want to like play to and maintain an image that they are liked by the people uh, on a like face value level, even if they know they're not actually liked like on a deep internal level. But so he kind of would want this to happen before the election so that he wouldn't have to fudge the numbers like he wouldn't have to like basically if opinion of him is really low when the election comes around, he would have to like have his victory numbers be he'd have to change them to be more believable. So instead of winning like 80% of the vote or 75% of the vote, he'd have to, if people really don't like him, he'd have to make it something like only winning 55% of the vote, which is, kind of ego damaging for a narcissist. So, and also he probably does actually still have legitimate fears of, stuff happening because there was the whole Wagner thing that did happen, and he would like to be able to stop maintaining this situation as is and be able to like quote unquote declare victory because if it keeps going, then the chances of a Wagner-esque thing happening again obviously increase, and also the population is already restless uh, for various reasons. And there's that stuff that happened in Dagestan at that airport where they like thousands of people just like busted down the fences and surrounded those planes from Israel, demanding them to bring out the Jews. So he had to divert Rovsgardia, like National Guard forces, to Dagestan to secure that situation. So now there's the risk of like stuff like that randomly happening, which would require like resources to deal with. So things continue to stack, but also the assaults that have gone on in Avdiivka have brought up the first like visual questionability of Russia's AFV and IFV numbers specifically, because around here, in the past week or two of it, they've now in those charges in the vehicle columns, they've started using amphibious like river crossing vehicles, which are technically they're IFVs, but they're not meant to be in like convoys. They're meant for ferrying troops across rivers or from landing ships to shore. They're not meant to be like charging across fields because they can't really do that at like, the speeds required. They're kind of slow crawlers when they're on land. And so they're nothing but mobile coffins. And even in some cases, they've as I showed at least a still from the video in the last stream last week. They've actually been doing the charges with just like trucks, like literally just trucks. So it's really calling into question their actual AFV, IFV numbers. For comparison, the actual listed numbers at the moment that are visually confirmed, at least, are 3,500 AFVs and IFVs combined have been lost. Russian AFVs and IFVs out of supposedly 5,600 of a modern stock. Now, there's been an additional 550 destroyed that were not part of that modern stock, that were ancient BMP 1s that they pulled out of storage and threw onto the battlefield. So, that in theory, they should have like 2,100, regular AFVs or IFVs left and shouldn't be resorting into like sending out amphibious river crossing vehicles and just literally just trucks. Yet that is what's being seen now. So again, that's bringing things into question about the actual numbers they have, and we've seen this with their air force as well. So the Su-25 is yeah, it's their primary. Let's get a bigger image. It's their like close air support aircraft. It's meant to play a similar role to the A-10. So ground forces, ask for support and it comes in and does like gun runs and drops bombs and stuff really low. So they have kind of disappeared largely from the battlefield compared to like their earlier numbers, at least, up until like early summer of this year, despite the fact that only around 40 have been shot down out of supposedly Russia claims to have 200 actively in service. However, now they're comparatively, at least, largely absent. They're only being seen about 20% as frequently as earlier. And granted, you can attribute some of the lack of air support sighting stuff to the fact that they now effectively have no near airfields they can use. The ones in Kherson and Zaporizhia have been destroyed by regular HIMARS strikes. The ones in Crimea have been hit by Storm Shadow cruise missiles. And the ones on the neighboring oblasts here that could then fly down south to the front line like that have also been hit. And the ones that were deep in Luhansk and Donetsk have now been struck. They were previously out of range, but now they were destroyed recently by ATACMS, the big boy HIMARS missile. Oh, there it is. Already have it. So the big boy Strong Lad goes up, and this isn't a HIMARS. This is a older M270, but it goes up, and when it comes down, the warhead explodes, and it has dozens of the like smaller regular HIMARS warheads inside. So it shotguns a bunch of those all across whatever the target is. In the first case of Ukraine using them, it was airfields in Luhansk and Donetsk. So it shotguns those all over the place, and then they all blow up, and everything just lights. And so they decimated those two airfields that they were using for close air support. And at the time, it was primarily Ka 52 attack helicopters that were there. And as of those strikes, that brings the destroyed count of Ka 52 attack helicopters up to 65 out of 112. It was initially claimed that Russia had 132. However, they've since then sort of self admitted that they only have 112. And in theory, um, after 2 whole years, their manufacturer has just completed 4 whole new ones. So, their net total count will boost up to 116, out of which, again, 65 have been destroyed. So those two are out of the question. So now any air support they launch has to come from like over here and then cross over the front lines, or down here and cross up over the sea like that, which limits the amount of time it can loiter over the battlefield and assist ground forces for. Because again, aircraft like close air support aircraft and helicopters and stuff, they don't have really long range. Uh, they they can't like fly long distances. They're designed to like be close to a battlefield, deployed to a battlefield, and like lumberingly sort of pace back and forth over it, doing gun runs and stuff, and then go back to their airfield, which is close to the battlefield. So the farther back you have to send them from, the less they're able to actually be able to do. And so that was part of the point of destroying those last two infield airfields. Also, destroying like almost 2 dozen attack helicopters at once was also a plus. The one other site that we know ATACMS was used at was north of Mariupol at a staging area where they staged a bunch of personnel before then, like sending them up to the front. And uh, there were roughly 3,000 Russian personnel there in the general range of what ATACMS hit. And being like, on the generous side and assuming, say, like between 1 and 2,000 of them weren't in the buildings, which are right next to each other, and were like out somewhere, I don't know, playing soccer or smoking or whatever, then that would still be probably 1,000 dudes like dead with one strike. But it was in the middle of the night, so actually, it's a lot more likely that way more of them were in the buildings sleeping. So, in terms of after that, we don't know. There have been some large strikes, large explosions that we think were probably HIMARS, or sorry, probably ATACMS from HIMARS, but we're not positive. One of them, actually, I should have bookmarked, was a couple days ago, far down. Shouldn't be that farther down. Oh, here it is. Okay. So, this was a fuel shipment coming in to one of the rail yards near Donetsk. That was fuel, primarily diesel fuel for military vehicles for the tanks and the AFEs and IFEs. And also, that is like the rail tracks themselves and everything. Those kind of got melted, contorted, and in some cases actually like severed by the explosions. But that was a couple days ago on Halloween, I believe. We're pretty sure it was because of the scale of it. It was probably an ATACMS strike. Lit that entire like massive parked shipment of fuel cars up, and so that was the fourth one. So, and like I said, there are a few others, but we're not like really positive because the same amount of stuff in some of those others could also have been done by like uh, a decent amount of regular HIMARS missile strikes. But those are the ones where ATACMS use was actually confirmed. But oh yeah, anyways, so the point I was making is for one, Russian aviation, especially ground support aviation, can't do as much anymore, so that does factor in. However, even before they destroyed all of those airfields, which again, most of that was recent in the last several months, even before they did that, uh, the presence of like Russian ground support aircraft was start or ground attack aircraft, I think is the actual term. Their presence was already starting to drop. Uh, I mentioned the Su-25 numbers. There's also the Su-34, which is no, no, 3, 4. There we go. Which is this one. Oh no, that's sorry. That's a snapshot from War Thunder. But yeah, this is the Su-34, and it is a ground attack aircraft. It kind of plays like a Russian role of the F-15. The F-15 is better, obviously, and also the F-15 is just the best. Yes, I know the F-22 and F-35 are technically better, obviously stealthier aircraft, but the F-15 is still the best because it was my childhood favorite. Fight me, I will physically fight you on that. And don't come in here with your F-16 mass production model garbage. The F-15 is the best. But anyways, so other than enlightening you guys on the fact that the F-15 is the best, the Su-34 is Russia's kind of equivalent. It does close-in ground bombing, and those have also kind of disappeared. Even though only about 30 have been shot down over the course of the war out of supposedly about 100. So, again, that's calling into question Russia's aviation numbers, which, aviation is probably the biggest, most expensive part of a military force. So, when, Russia's budget numbers doesn't match what it claims it has, that's going to be one of the areas you would expect it to like manifest the most visibly, and it seems to be doing so. So that is how that's all going as of the moment. And I should check stream like a responsible streamer. 2,600 or 6,500 dollars what for Palestine? $6,500 for what? Uh, Green. Oh, Josh. I forgot. I forgot that was Josh for a second. Okay, Josh is here. Josh, you're supposed to be streaming. This was your stream night. You were going to stream. Go ahead and stream. I'll try to be as quick with this as I can, and then I'll go over there to be your mod. So it's get lunch. Uh, I'm assuming that is a. I'm assuming that is the F slur, so that is going to be removed. Uh, Again, putting like figures or X's in your slurs or swear words doesn't hide it. I'm not an algorithm. I'm a person. Like I'm going to look at these and see what it is. So don't do it. Uh Ukraine last. How long will US China last? That again, it all depends. Because there is information that I don't actually like have specific certain access to. Ukraine effectively in this like recognizable stage of it, the current frontline stalemate, this this will last for as long as Russia can still keep getting SPGs up to that frontline breach, or for however much longer their pool of SPGs lasts. Now, again, because all of their numbers are in doubt, they probably don't actually have 1,600, or that was, sorry, the amount they started with. They probably never actually had 1,600. They probably have, uh, again, not like a massive amount less, but they probably do have like a few hundred less in reality. So they still could keep holding that for like a few months at the loss rate that they're going, which is losing about 100 SPGs per month, trying to hold that frontline breach like that by maintaining that massive curtain of artillery fire. So they could, uh, in theory, they could like hold that like decently into this coming year, even on a reduced SPG amount. But eventually, when they run out of the capacity to hold that, then it will break down. and they'll suffer a line collapse. But even before running out of SPGs, they might just like fail at the whole artillery shell thing, since again, they're now having to rely on old like old generational shells that they gave North Korea a long time ago, and even their rocket artillery, their MLRS systems, they're down to like mostly using Grads, the M21 Grad, and they're now having to resort to buying back all of the old Grad rocket ammunition they gave Iran a long time ago, because now some post-destruction pics that were able to be taken up close have shown the like rocket ammunition that was accompanying their Grad vehicles up there at the front had been like rebranded with Iranian designations and stuff. So they're now having to buy rocket artillery ammunition back from Iran that they gave them generations ago. So that might actually end up being an issue before the SPGs go, but I can't say that for certain. Also, oh, sorry, I have to go over here for that. Also, they're getting a bit iffy, a bit dangerous and incoherent with some of the stuff they're allowing. This isn't the Russian military doing this. This is how they get around it by having a mercenary group do it. But where was it? Was it multiple days ago? How long ago? Oh yeah, there it is. So you can find this in any other like Newsmax you want. But so they are now recruiting women for their combat roles, which is, you know, not the best idea, especially for a country who supposedly is like really obsessed with avoiding its demographic collapse that's already happening. So, yeah, this is not really advised. This isn't a bright idea, but they're doing it anyways. Like, where is it? Do I have the latest one on here? That's the real question. Is this the 2023 update? It is. Okay, so yeah, and you can see down there kind of the drop between last year and this year. Number of births is like larger than the previous one, and then the one several years back, the abrupt massive drop was because of COVID lockdown. But they're in a collapsing scenario. Like this is going to unfold even more so than the last one did, and again, you can in the general calculus of biology, you can afford to lose guys. You really shouldn't. That's also still not advisable. But because they tend to be your workforce, but you can't start throwing away females. That's like self-death sentencing. And again, this is coming from a country that is supposedly places its whole demographic crisis as like its most pressing urgent concern. So this isn't really like the best course of action. I wouldn't advise going down this road. But if avoiding if the prime narcissist avoiding uh public defeat is actually more important than demographically saving Russia, then I guess that's how it's going to go. Uh, 13 big. Oh, oh, okay. So that's the bribery price. That's a bribery price that technically Israel is trying to pay Egypt. Blah 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 blah. Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. Oh, it is Volkswagen or Volkswagen. It's our Brazilian German heritage, dude. So okay, that is everything that's actually happening, or at least that I was going to go down. And also, actually, sorry, I forgot one thing. So, uh, as I kind of expected, I might have mentioned this in a stream or in a video. I did comment it on Twitter a few times. Uh, that there was the whole initial discussion of Ukraine would get F-16s and potentially Swedish Gripens by 2025, and the F-16s got now pushed forward to they'll be in the air in Ukraine sometime like summer of next year. And I initially, when the first agreement was reached back at the very start of this year, I, commented that, okay, what that actually means is that we started training Ukrainian pilots on F-16s and probably Gripens even uh, in the last few months of 2022 is what that probably actually translates to. So in reality, I was like, all right, you might see them as soon as like fall of 2023. Although I still would expect like very early start of the year 2024. And several F-16s were uh, spotted in the general area patch of where things come to in southeastern Poland before they then get smuggled into Ukraine in a way that apparently Russia, despite supposedly having just as effective of a surveillance and intelligence apparatus as the US does, apparently can't figure out or intercept with cruise missiles or anything. Still just can't manage it somehow, I guess. Stuff just makes it in no matter what. So several F-16s already showed up there. And so this is another case of it looks like I was right. So I still would not expect to see those like used until we cross into next year. But I would not be like entirely shocked if they suddenly like appear in use for the first time, like say in December. So they are about to actually receive F-16s uh, and all of our like the modern versions of our munitions that come along with it. All the AIM variants, the AMRAAMs, the HARM missiles. They actually already have had HARM missiles for a while. Uh, there was actually a brilliant technical rework between Ukrainian and Polish and Romanian avionics guys to reconfigure things and actually be able to integrate the HARM missiles firing system into the old Soviet jets that Kiev has still been using up to this point. It was initially actually believed that like that wouldn't be a possible thing, but they actually managed to figure out something and got it to work. So that's how they've been using those and how they've been launching Storm Shadow cruise missiles. But now, moving on from that to the title of the stream, which is, if it all goes wrong, this is where we go into like the worst possible scenario. Again, since a lot of people annoyingly like just spam "It's World War III, it's World War III" in the comments section of anything, anytime something happens post 2022. So we're now going to look at all right, what is the worst possible way this could go down? What would it be if it actually like really was World War III? So how it would go? Initially, I would have expected for like the first additional like build up into it would be Hezbollah actually going all out, which again they still might. This might still be a stalling tactic, to gradually have Hamas expend all of its rockets while Hezbollah continues expending some and like wear down the Iron Dome system. That might still be like a underlying thing they're doing, but it's looking like this isn't actually building up to what it possibly could have been. But we still did take all the force placement security measures necessary, anyways. So what would have at least had to have happened or still happen at some point in the future is like Israel actually just like uh, goes full Netanyahu on Gaza and just like actually like massacres a huge chunk of the population. That makes everybody go rage mode. Hezbollah like goes all in, and the Islamic Revolution like goes all in, and Syria, as Assad has bragged he would, but still won't do anything because he's a coward. Actually, like engages with its military. Again, Syria's military is not really that interesting or impressive. The Houthis like launch all their cruise missiles. Iran actually like launches a bombardment of its cruise missiles and ballistic missiles, and everything like just lights up one after the other, and the whole like region becomes embroiled. Everyone who would do it goes for it. It most countries would not like engage on a actual national level. Like Egypt wouldn't actually like attack Israel with its military. But the Islamic Revolution would get way more than 40,000 volunteers. Like it would, if Israel had actually gone like full massacre on Gaza, then it probably would have been like a few 100,000 people that showed up. None of which really would be from the richer Persian Gulf states because they're all rich and lazy now. They don't really want to partake in anything. And also, Saudi Arabia isn't really interested in Islam, it's interested in money. That granted, that's also the case for the other Persian Gulf governments as well. Turkey is interested in its own like power grab ambitions. It's also not really interested in Islam or protecting Palestine. However, there has actually arisen a growing divide between Erdogan and the government in Ankara and the actual Turkish people. The general population has been kind of calling for blood, which isn't in Erdogan's like range of things he wants to do. He wants the whole Azerbaijan wipe out Armenia thing to trigger a war with Iran, which Turkey will win, and then Azerbaijan gets the northern Iraq, Azeri provinces of Iran, which gives Turkey control over the deposits there of the few like mineral resources, like metals and stuff that it does not have deposits of domestically. And then from there, like in the future, they would do their whole Syria, northern Iraq stuff. So that's what Erdogan is into. He's not really into the whole Grand Muslim Army thing. However, the tide of the people in Turkey is actually like more in that direction. So now there's a bit of a tug of war between him and the people over the last few weeks since all of this started happening. But the whole region would have to light up completely for it to qualify. Me saying like it qualifies as a beginning portion of the worst possible scenario or World War III, and then uh, eventually, eventually it would then have to result in like some kind of actual engagement from Iran, and Turkey would then sort of take advantage of that. Actually, a lot of people would take advantage of a lot of things. So one of the other hold on one of the other things that would be part of this also. I know I bookmarked this. Where is it? Okay, it was a bit farther back. It was before Halloween. Where is it? There it is. Okay. So The Houthis, the ones that have not unguided rockets but long distance cruise missiles. The Houthis have released a thing saying they will not hesitate with a picture of Israel's primary nuclear reactor. So that would then come into play potentially, like if they actually got through and struck that, and then had like a massive radiation spill in Israel, which is kind of a not very large country, so that would be very affectatious. Uh, in like a maddened response to that, or just a maddened response to everything, Netanyahu slash the War Council in Jerusalem just like goes full psycho. And again, this is like absolute worst possible scenario. They go full psycho, and maybe they threaten to do it first, but they it doesn't really stop the Grand Muslim Army or whatever it would call itself. It doesn't stop them, so they destroy the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem, which is one of the Muslim like super sacred holy sites. That and Mecca down in Saudi Arabia, and so if they did that, yeah, that would probably do it. That would then like really set it off and might actually trigger state actors who wouldn't otherwise do anything into acting. Like that might actually then turn Egypt against them, and like that would then cause a massive influx of militia volunteers to the Islamic Revolution, and you would end up seeing human waves on a scale Russia isn't even doesn't even have the brain capacity to dream of the scale of human waves you would probably end up seeing from that. And then in the midst of this mass embroilment of all of that's like coming down on Israel, and at the same time, the U.S. inevitably having a standoff, like cruise missile and aerial engagement with Iran in the Persian Gulf to make sure, along with several of the Chinese naval vessels that are there, this would be an awkward situation where you would actually see a U.S. Chinese team up. Um, Having a that engagement with Iran to keep them from like doing anything to shut down the outflow through the Strait of Hormuz of oil to the like global supply. Then you'd have like chaos in India uh, because of the like split between their Muslim and Hindu population. There'd be like massive internal chaos that would erupt there. You'd also have that in a bunch of other whose uh, countries whose governments don't directly then act against Israel would also see like something similar. And this would trigger a chain reaction that would make it global and fully classify as a World War III, because it would trigger everyone who wants to do something really badly to do it in the chaos of this while they are sure or like reasonably assured that like global order stabilizing force is not going to come against them, at least while the Middle Eastern stuff would still be going on. So in this scenario, once the full embroilment starts, a bunch of people would start going for it. For example, Azerbaijan would Azerbaijan would invade Armenia. You know, maybe this is like one of the scenarios that's probably actually more likely to actually happen. We're talking outside of worst case scenario things, but they are in reality still probably going to invade Syunik and Vayot's provinces in Armenia. That's still going to happen anyways in reality eventually. But in worst case scenario, taking advantage of the chaos of this, like they would go all out, they would invade Armenia, and eventually would like take this stuff from northwestern Iran, because while all this is going on and Iran is deeply embroiled with it, Turkey would take that opportunity to launch their knockout war against Iran. Although Turkey might also be having to deal with instability at home as well, because their population would also be kind of pissed at them for not joining like the Grand Muslim Army stuff. And as that starts to crumble in Iran, uh, other stuff would start to go, like Balochistan down here, which they share half of with Pakistan. It's a separate. It's a separate. I forgot what the region is called. But it's a separate like ethno-linguistic group there that doesn't really like being part of Pakistan or part of Iran. And I mean, both governments kind of oppress them, like governments in any nation do to any minority. That's, how it goes. So they would probably like start some kind of uprising, which would then, cascade into stuff. Uh, their, brothers and sisters in Pakistan would then also start a Baloch uprising in Pakistan, probably, and that would cause, a crumbling cascade. And also, like, there would already be violence and unrest in Pakistan, anyways, as like a blowback against Pakistan, not on a national actor level joining the whole like grand Giga Chad jihad thing. Partly because Pakistan, even if it wanted to, no longer has the government competence or the government budgetary ability to do so. And so that stuff would go down. And also taking advantage of things would be Tajikistan. As Tajikistan, where are you? Here. Okay. Tajikistan uh, claims a big chunk of Kyrgyzstan, also chunks of Afghanistan. They also claim chunks of China, but they're not stupid enough to try for that. Probably they already did try invading Kyrgyzstan last year. It didn't really end well. They got ratioed pretty bad because their military just sucks. However, in the and eventually they got told by both China and Russia to stop, so they stopped. However, in the chaos of all of this, they would probably try to go for it as well. And yeah, this is like their claim area that they would probably take, and they'd probably, also take the area they claim in Afghanistan as well, the Badakhshan province, because no one's going to come to help the Taliban. It's the Taliban. They don't have a long list of friends, so that would happen. And what else do we have? Oh yeah, in Ethiopia, no longer under the watchful eye of the outside world, the Ethiopian government would have free reign to just like go full genocide on the minority groups it doesn't like, the Amara, the Tigray, and the Afar. Granted, they already killed like 2 million of the Tigray people via starvation and medical supply deprivation over the last 3 years. But there's still a few million of them left, and the government of Ethiopia doesn't like that too much. They would like them dead, actually. They'd also like the Afar people dead and the Amara people dead. Why do they want them dead? Because they refuse to like integrate and be subservient to the broader Ethiopian government, and they want their freedom, and by all means they really should have it. And also, like, this isn't exactly Ethiopia. Like, uh, this here, this is Ethiopia. The reason that there's a reason, like, when you see all of this included in various maps of different historical times, there's reason it was referred to as the Ethiopian Empire. Just like all the parts of the Roman Empire weren't parts of Rome slash the country that would become Italy, and everything shaded in the Persian Empire. It is not. It doesn't belong to Iran. So Ethiopia, with no one like really saying that they'll stop them anymore, would probably just like try to go full genocide. Egypt's in the middle of everything. We're also kind of would probably fly down and bomb the dam there on the border. Again, Ethiopia couldn't really do anything about it if they did. So that would go down. There would be some stuff down in interior Africa as well. Would I put those maps? Where'd I put those maps? Congo? Ah, yes. Okay. So this is the Congo, the big Congo. This here, the Kivu Nord province, is already like it's been in chaos for a long time, and it is like partially occupied. uh, not very secretly by Rwandan and Ugandan troops. Rwanda and Uganda are kind of in a joint team up thing. They want this region because this region is where down in the south is where the cobalt and the lithium and the copper are. Up here in this belt region here is where all of the gold and the tin and the tantalum, very critical resource, are, and they want control of that. And so, with no one really to point at them and scold them, because that's all anyone has really done to them so far, they would probably like drop the secrecy and actually invade the place and try to take everything. And the thing is, would they succeed? Actually, yes, because you might initially look at like the Congo and think, oh, the Congo is a massive country. It must be more powerful than them. No, it is not. It is internally horrendously divided between like tribal and ethnic lines. And also, it has no real military. Its military, uh, again, not in the joking matter. Like you can look them up yourself. Its military literally is dudes in camo with AK-47s. That is the Congolese military. That's why they have so much trouble actually like fighting any of this. But with no one around to like scold them for doing so anymore, in the midst of all this chaos, they would probably actually invade, like full real and seize the area, and thus take control of the tantalum, gold, and tin mines, and get the profit for themselves and everything. So that would be another one. Again, with no one, without fearing the threat of reprisal from the West for disrupting the oil supply. This is Libya, except not really. In reality, this is Libya. This part is controlled by the elected government. This part is controlled by General Haftar, I believe his name is. Basically, he wants to be the new Gaddafi. He declared himself supreme general commando leader, and he he controls this part. The elected government controls this part. In the absence of anyone to come and like drone strike him if he disrupts the oil supply, he would probably like finish what he initially wanted to do and just seize the entire country, and would probably commit mass executions of anyone who was in the military of the elected portion. He would probably just execute them. So that would all happen. And hold on, where is the other thing? Okay, I think this is it. All right, yeah. So the main like actual engagements on the whole Israel versus Grand Muslim Army front would primarily just be northern. There might be like some groups that like try to like come in through northern portions of Jordan, but Jordan wouldn't really participate. Their hand, even if they wanted to, their hands are kind of tied because, especially right now at this moment, decent amount of our specifically U.S. along with I don't know what portions of like other allied forces are there, but a decent chunk of ours, just ours alone, military force is actually in Jordan at this moment. So their hands would kind of be tied, even if they wanted to like participate. Some groups would still like make their way through here to try to like expand and stretch Israel along a front. Egypt, again, you would have to push it really far for Egypt as a state to actually act. The whole going psycho mode and like destroying the Dome of the Rock thing as a act of revenge or reprisal or a reprisal against, like, say, again, the Houthis like actually struck Israel's nuclear reactor with cruise missiles and thus caused a massive radiation spill. That would probably be enough to tip Egypt into doing it, but even then, I still wouldn't be entirely too sure. However, Egypt's modern military is even like worse than their 1970s like Yom Kippur War military was. So they wouldn't really do anything like in terms of like affecting an outcome. They wouldn't really be worth anything. So I don't think I did other maps after that. But then again, there's also like not much else that would then happen. That's about everyone who has things on their plate that they want to do. There are people who probably would say, wouldn't Serbia like invade Kosovo? No, they wouldn't. They're not. Uh, Vucic, I think is his name. He's like appeals to the nationalist crowd, but he's not actually that stupid. Like he'll the guys who did that like shooting, the Serbian guys who did that like shooting in Kosovo, he'll hail them publicly as like national heroes, but he's not actually stupid. He knows he would get destroyed in an instant. Uh and this is the interesting thing. If this all happened and was going on, it actually might in this scenario at least make China hold off on Taiwan because China would also be rushing a bunch of its force over to the Persian Gulf region to try to play its part in maintaining supply lines coming out of the Persian Gulf, because it, much more so than we are, or actually much more so than we even were at like our highest point, it is like desperately dependent on outflows from the Persian Gulf. So it would be really, it would kind of be like a slap in the face thing that it would force them to kind of hold off on the Taiwan stuff while this is going down. Again, I don't think this is going to go down. Like this is just the worst case scenario thing. So in reality, the Taiwan stuff is probably still going to happen. Uh, the only thing that's like an actual unpredictability is like the North Korea stuff. Like, I don't know. Nobody does. Like what Kim Jong Un actually feels or wants. Like he threatens to like nuke everybody all the time, just like his dad did, because that's their thing. Like I don't know if he like actually would try something or if he actually even wants to try something. Like I honestly think he's content just being like uselessly fat in his palace. Uh, so I'm pretty sure that's what he would do. And but I mean, if he actually does like try something, it, they're just gonna get crushed. Kind of. That's not really like a fair fight. But so that would be like the worst case scenario. And I guess like worst case code black times 50 would be if the whole human waves like Grand Muslim Army thing actually was like pushing Israel back and actually like collapsing them territorially. That would push Israel into actually using nukes. And Israel is the like only country that ever actually like would really use nukes again. The rest of us legitimately just have them as a strategic deterrence thing. Israel's are for strategic deterrence as well. However, because that they're the only one that would one has the mentality to because of like they could be pushed into a threat of annihilation, and also uh, be because of the fact that they could be pushed into a threat of annihilation. That's why they have the potential mentality, and also is the physical reasoning of like why they would potentially do it. So they are like the only one who would ever like really actually use nukes. And if the whole human waves Grand Muslim Army Jihad Gigachad thing was working and was actually like folding them in, then they would actually resort to using nukes. So that would be like absolute utter worst case scenario code black. However, that's even much more unlikely than the other scenario, because to the disappointment of many around the region and across the world who have been calling for blood, uh, the various like leaders of the different groups, Hezbollah, Islamic Revolution, like I said earlier, have ended up being like kind of disappointing to the people who wanted them to like declare ultimate grand gigachad jihad. They have ended up not doing so and just kind of kind of given like weak speeches, issuing vague threats in Israel's direction. So that's increasingly looking like it's a lot less likely, but it is still a possibility we consider like on the table, which is kind of why we rushed a bunch of stuff over there. Oh yeah, there is kind of a funny story going on. So I had a funny story for you guys last time about the epic fail of Russian propagandists trying to film a fake video of American soldiers in Moldova. So there's a group, a big march that's going to happen in Turkey, supposedly this weekend, I think, where the group says they're going to march on the U.S. base down here, and they said that they're going to surround the base and overwhelm the base and break in and take the nuclear warheads. Like they're just a mob of people. So I I don't know if that's going to materialize, but if it does, that's not how that's actually going to go. That's going to end the same way the massive mob of people who wanted to storm Area 51 would have ended. It's just going to end with a pile of bodies. And we also actually several B-1 bombers are now in the area. So uh, you know it's looking like as a 1% chance of it actually happening, we're preparing for that to potentially have them do like a run down the approaching column and just like I don't know, drop like 80 J dams at once or something. If they actually do like try to like wait like swarm over the fence like a zombie swarm. But that's something that a this this like whatever they named themselves, the this like march group that wants to march on the base to the nukes. Is they say they're going to this weekend, but we'll see if it actually materializes or not. I should check chat like a responsible streamer. Uh, explode Iran nuclear power plant. Uh, I mean, yeah, the Iran's nuclear power plant is like any other nuclear power plant. It is like a open structure that's clearly visible. If you mean like the centrifuge sites that they're theoretically like spinning up uranium to make nuclear weapons with, they have moved those like deep under the mountains to the point that they are likely, as determined by us, even they are likely not really strikeable. Like we could probably use bunker busters to like cave in the entrances. However, they have numerous different entrances, and also the stuff is hardened enough, at least in our estimation, that the like inside beyond like 20 or 30 meters inside the tunnel wouldn't collapse. So they could just dig the entrance out. So they've kind of put that out of reach at this point. So it's come to the point where like if they want to make nukes, they're gonna get nukes. Honestly, I would probably say they already have finished a few warheads at this point. Granted, they haven't tested anything, and they would probably hold off on doing that because that would kind of give away the fact that they already have them. But Iran would not like actually use them. Everyone thinks that the moment Iran gets like even one nuke, they're just going to immediately lob it at like Tel Aviv or something. But uh, Iran would be as just as how they're not getting involved like militarily for real at the moment, despite how much they supposedly care about the Palestinians in Gaza. Iran would not actually use its nukes for anything other than strategic self-deterrence because they have a long-standing paranoid fear of like being invaded by the U.S. Which I mean I can't blame them for having that fear. However, we would not actually try something like that, because it would be not like it would not go the best. I mean, we would succeed in the end, yes, but it really would not be worth it. Plus, like the only thing that could honestly get us to do it would be thinking that we're stopping them from like finalizing nukes. And if it's my not, as people pointed out in the past, non-credentialed opinion, that they probably already have finished some nukes, then the intelligence apparatuses are probably also already like aware of or of the opinion that Iran probably already does have nukes. So the one thing that people like argue could like trigger us to actually attempt an invasion is something that's already sort of come and gone. So there's nothing that would really do it now. Like what we would do if we were trying at least to say topple Iran would just be to send the B-2s and the B-21s and just bomb everything like radar invisibly. And also in the case of the B-21s from 70,000 feet, where it's, even if you could see it on radar, which you can't, it would be outside of like an interceptor missile's range anyways. Because most of them can't really do above, I think, 50 to 60,000. And even when they get to that range, they start to fail anyways. But but still, they believe a invasion by the U.S. is like something inevitable, so they would keep those for themselves. Uh, the question, like actually, that arises for me, if they do already have some, would be like, would they use them against Turkey when the whole Azerbaijan, Armenia, Iran, Turkey thing inevitably happens? And honestly, I would lean like slightly more towards probably not, because they, in strategic calculus, quote unquote, uh, they would ultimately be losing a region that's been perpetually rebellious anyways, because it's again it's full of Azeris, not Iranians, and like they would ultimately probably determine that it's worth just letting that go, rather. What are you doing, Google Earth? Rather than like wasting what few nukes they might have on trying to stop that. Plus, also, they would then likely have another stacked fear that using nukes would then like draw actually more reprisal from other nations against them. So they kind of ironically, like Israel, would are probably like keeping theirs, assuming they have some already, or would be if they have not developed them yet, keeping theirs like as a like as a get back measure to launch if the like dreaded paranoid mass invasion they fear actually were to happen. Check the rest of chat. Hold on. What was that? Hope everything is well. Uh, yeah. I mean, for the most part, I had that massive nosebleed earlier, like 200 milliliters of blood loss or something. I have lost like three or four patrons over the last couple of weeks. Uh, because of not like in July where I was depressed and like didn't produce anything. I didn't work on anything for like a whole month. People left because of that in July. This time, obviously, it's probably because of the Israel stuff. But I expected something like that was probably going to happen. So Patreon dropped from 76 down to 66 or $67 a month. So I mean, it wasn't too big of a drop, and technically, that's still enough to like be the like yearly stacked up to meet my like medication fees and doctor's fees and everything. I mean, granted, it would be nice if it was still higher and like going back up again, because then it could meet the expenses of more stuff. But uh, Oh, thank you. Uh, I'll assume you're the person who joined like several days ago. Uh, yeah, I'll update the Patreon map soon. Uh, Opinion of Gaddafi. Uh, I mean, he's just a general nut. I mean, like the same general opinion like you would expected to have of anyone who like seizes power of a place and then like just starts like loading extra titles onto themselves. And always he was actually like a nut. Like he had like weird obsessions and like would only surround himself with female bodyguards. And I don't remember if it was him or one of the others, but I think he was the one who also had an obsession with unibrows or something. But yeah, he was he was just like a nut. I mean, he wasn't for most of the time like he wasn't a threat. Uh, like once I mean once he started like send when the protest stuff started in the Arab Spring and he started like having the military gun people down in the streets. Like, if you're asking, do I support intervention against things like that? Yeah, I do. Actually, I would get assassinated really fast as a like a U.S. president because I would have been intervening in like a lot more stuff. Like I would have struck a bunch of Ethiopia's military equipment and not let them kill 2 million people in Tigray. I also I also honestly would have struck a few things in Myanmar. You know, you can get antsy about me testing the waters with China, but my my morals are what they are. I oppose genocide regardless of who's doing it. Like the dudes, Hamas crossing over into Israel and massacring 1,400 people was evil. I mean, I have bad news for people who are like side choosing about things. The IDF is also kind of evil. Just mass bombing Gaza. Getting up to 11,000 dead now. 20,000 people who are like so critically wounded they're probably going to die in a matter of days if they aren't evacuated. That's also evil. Like it, there is no one is a quote unquote good side. I'll let's see. What else? And yeah, honestly, I would have I would have just I would have thrown some hands with Azerbaijan as well. But in terms of like opinion on Gaddafi, like no, he was just a nut. I mean, he was a stable. Uh, he was a stable crazy person in terms of like politically, like in terms of like what Libya was doing throughout his reign, politically, he was a stable crazy person. Like he wasn't like he wasn't like Saddam. He wasn't like, invading this neighbor, then that neighbor, then that neighbor, then launching ballistic missiles against, this neighbor over here. He wasn't doing a bunch of random crazy stuff up until the Arab Spring when the protests started and he started having them all like gunned down en masse. So I guess that's you can summarize my quote unquote opinion that way. So like if he had like not done that and had just remained like a regular crazy dude sitting in his palace obsessed with hot muscular female bodyguards with unibrows, that would have been fine. But he didn't. He started massacring people, which is when you tip me over into the you need to die phase. To lose service. Oh, thank you. Wait, why are you losing service though? You're not in a. You're not like getting cut off or something like they're cutting your service, are you? Please don't tell me you're like in some kind of combat zone somewhere and you're like spending time messaging me. Anybody else can't afford these Taliban cannot afford extra people war. What? Oh yeah, the mass departure thing. So I think I have this bookmarked somewhere as well. Uh, hold on. Should be under the Afghanistan news one. That's Tanzania. Where is where is it? Okay, hold on. It might be under the actual Afghan news thing, maybe. It was a few days ago, so I'll have to scroll down a bit. I think it was like around the whoa. Oh yeah. So uh, Iran is doing it as well, but Pakistan and Iran are trying to force all of the Afghan refugees back into Afghanistan. Uh, and Pakistan, because Pakistan cannot even handle the 233 now million people that it already has. They're they have no money and they're like too incompetent to deal with anything. And Iran, as I already said, and you can take the implication with how they treat the Azeri people and the Kurds, and with how they treat women. Iran is a very apart from being a male centric radical Islamist regime, it's also a Persian like ethnocentrist kind of thing now. So they don't like the Azeris, they don't like the Kurds, they don't like the Afghans either. So they're trying to shove them across the border between Pakistan and Iran. However, they've only managed to deport about 20,000 of them over the last month or so, despite I forgot what Iran's like number goal slash ultimatum was, but Pakistan here back at the start of October, they said they literally issued like a decree saying by the end of the month, all 1.7 million of them are going to be kicked back across the border. Well, it turns out Pakistan's like turns out Pakistan's internal like security stuff and logistics is I guess can't really do it because they managed to out of those 20,000 six a grand total of 6,000 were ones that were sent back from Pakistan. Granted, Iran's numbers aren't that much more impressive, but still, Pakistan was the one who made like a big proclamation of like we're going to do this thing, and then just utterly failed at it. Uh, kind of, uh, kind of like Russia steamrolling Ukraine. That didn't happen. Uh, and also, there was one other $10. Wow, thank you. I literally clicked on chat just in time to see that. That is actually the exact amount that a Patreon dropped by. So thank you for that. Exceptionally. Uh, flooded. Yeah, I saw that. That Mecca is flooded because the Saudi government, like the other rich Persian Gulf nations governments, is completely incompetent and sucks. They don't they don't like build actual sewage systems. I'm not going to go looking for it because I have no idea where it is. But remember, in Dubai, like they don't have a sewer. The sewage like collects in big tanks at the bottom of like all the buildings and then gets taken away by trucks in convoys. The same thing happens in a lot of places in Saudi Arabia, and it all gets transported to this big lake of sewage somewhere around like here that they just dump the sewage into. And that's not even a there's no treatment plant. It gets just gets dumped into a sewage lake. and the others basically do the same thing. So because they're too busy blowing off all their money on these like ridiculous mega projects like the line they want to build up here, a 75-mile long, 200-meter wide, 500-meter tall skyscraper, and it's gonna have like the silver coated surfaces and everything. This is totally real, guys. It's really gonna happen. And in Riyadh, they're building the Cube, a 400-meter by 400-meter by 400-meter cube, where the windows, no joke, are going to have similar to how uh, a lot of their skyscrapers have like a micro coating of silver on the windows. They're going to coat the outer surfaces of that cube with actual gold. Like this is grand. This is grand Giga Chad idiocy. And no, these are not materializing. For anyone who somehow believes that, uh, they're they were building something a lot simpler, just a kilometer tall skyscraper in Jeddah, which is not something which is something that's actually possible. Like Dubai already has the Burj Khalifa, which is not a kilometer tall, but it's actually like close to it. So the Jeddah Tower wasn't an impossible thing. They still failed at that. It is half finished. It's been half finished since 2018, and it's never going to be finished. Hold on, here we go. Jeddah Tower 2023. Yeah, so that's it. Uh, it's been frozen in time like that. So this is what it was supposed to be. Like here's okay, well that's not that much bigger, but I hoped the image would be bigger. But here's the Burj Khalifa, and this was Jeddah Tower. So tower wise, it wasn't really going to be that much higher, but the ascending spire thing that's just like a giant shard on top to make it look taller was gonna like go up by another 100 meters. And they have a thing down there where you can see how much is currently finished. See, they didn't even get halfway. I was wrong. I was wrong. They didn't even get halfway up, and it's just been frozen in time as a symbol of epic failure. So yeah, they so okay. This the ramble started after the comment about Mecca being flooded. That's because they don't for one they don't have regular sewage systems. They also don't have storm drain systems. Despite the fact that when they do receive rain, it tends to be like heavy downpours. They don't have like basically anything that any rational like functional society would have. So yeah, that's not all that surprising, and I'm sure they're gonna. Uh, they usually do another one every year and a half or so. So they announced the cube last year, I think. So sometime next year they should announce some new stupid thing that they're never really gonna start and or finish. Oh yeah, also Saudi Arabia. Uh, Despite how much extra money they made from the high oil prices ever since Russia invaded Ukraine, for an example of how much Saudi Arabia actually like just blows money off, including on funding all the various terrorist groups. Uh, they actually, despite all this money, uh, went into deficit by I think like it was only like 3% or something, but they've actually thrown themselves into deficit because they just waste all that money on all of these like meaningless political publicity stunts to like that have no purpose but to show off the fact that they have money. But get this out of my face. How long can the West keep the lights on? In what sense? I mean that like what do you mean by that? In terms of how long in terms of how long we have access to energy for? I mean that varies a lot by not necessarily individual country, but kind of by region. Like there's, some people, uh, Germany, or some people are being more stupid than others, like shutting down all their nuclear plants and being a northern latitude country that's like trying to go hard on solar energy and batteries. Uh, then there's Norway and Finland, who are both really intelligent. Uh, and like Finland is about to be almost all nuclear, and Sweden is like the dumb sibling in the middle of those two, who said they're going to like ban liquid fuel vehicles starting in 2025. Britain, you guys have been getting less dumb. Initially, you were gonna uh, ban like liquid fuel vehicles in 2035 or something, and now you pushed it 5 years back, which is like, I'm assuming that's your way of tacitly admitting that you're stupid and you realize that you're making a horrific mistake. But if I don't know if you, I guess the most broad reaching thing you might mean with that is like energy access, then like beyond your lifetime basically is like what I would say. I mean, there's going to be issues in a few places, but again, that's has like everything to do with those places, like individual stupidity, like Deutschland, like Sweden. And no, I'm not saying Sweden's real name because I did look it up because I know Norway is Norge. Uh, However, Sweden's actual name is really, it's not what I thought it was. It's kind of messed up, and I'm just like, no, you guys don't deserve me putting in the effort. So I'm just going to say Sweden in a awkward accent, and you're going to live with it. Then who else is dumb? Who else is dumb here? Who else is being really dumb? Uh, Nederland. Nederland is being pretty dumb. Doing the whole shutting down the natural gas stuff. I mean, yes, electricity wise, they have an excuse for going like all wind power because they actually can. Because this belt right here, through here and up over this is like one of the only places in the world where you get the Maxogear certified stamp of go ahead and use wind power here. It's actually worth it because this is one of the only places in the world, this flow belt right here, where there is eternal wind. And when I tell you guys typically wind power to be worth using, you should only be used in places with eternal wind. I mean eternal wind. I don't mean what people from like random Midwest states tell me, like it's windy a lot here. I don't mean it's windy a lot here. Okay, I've looked at your charts. There are places in the Midwestern U.S., particularly some areas of Kansas and Nebraska, that do actually have some permanent, like eternal wind, although it's actually not that powerful, though. I'm not talking about it's windy a lot. I mean eternal wind. That is the only stamp of approval you get where, yes, wind turbines are worth using. Because then their total like energy yield ratio goes up to something like 20 to 1, as opposed to if you're using them if you're being stupid and you're using them somewhere where it's not really, like windy eternally, then you're going to get something more like 8 to 1. Now, of course, if you use them somewhere where it's windy a lot, then, you might push it up to 12, but you, you want to keep civilization as a whole like over 20. But so that's like that area there. That's one of the only wind okay areas. Go ahead and use wind turbines. Excuse me, zoom in here. This area here between the Aegean and Black Sea, parts of it parts of it are with Bulgaria, parts with Greece, but most of it is Turkey. That area is one of the only other areas of eternal wind. And get off my screen. Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, especially, this area, this funnel right up here, has eternal wind. Where's the other one? Down here, the southern half of Argentina, like the whole southern half of Argentina, has eternal wind. Again, at altitude, like 100 meters up or so, like where the wind turbine would be, not necessarily at ground level. New Zealand has eternal wind. Parts of Tasmania, some of the Indonesian islands, I don't remember which ones. And then the one other place, I think it's like the east coast of Korea, but I'm not positive. And then up here, this gap right here in China, this fold, uh, where stuff either comes into, I think I think it comes out of because it falls down from the Himalayas and from these other surrounding mountains up here. It falls down and then gets like funneled and rushed out through this channel between mountain ranges right here. So from here up and out around this mouth right here, that area has eternal wind, and I think that's it for the most part. Oh no, wait. Sorry. There's a few spots at the base of the Himalayas. I think it ended up being that the like one of them is at this corner of India's border with Nepal, and one of them is at this corner where like the air falling down basically has a very small area of eternal wind. But outside of those, wind power is not something worth like chasing after. And what was? Oh yeah, that was sorry. That was all like a long singular ramble that just went off from me commenting on Nederland here being really stupid. Along with Deutschland, their neighbor, and along with Sweden, their other neighbor, and Polska. Polska, my personal favorite, is actually joining in though on the getting in on the Eternal Wind corridor here. They're starting construction of some offshore wind turbines right up here, since obviously this portion for them would be the portion that is still in the Eternal Wind current the most, and thus would be the most useful. So uh, at first, by like 2026, I think they're going to have 300 megawatts of power generation from that. And there should be enough for them to eventually get up to having between 1 and 2 gigawatts. But again, they're on like the end of the eternal wind current there. So there's not as much for them to be able to reliably utilize than, say, Denmark. But Poland is going nuclear, actually, for larger power generation. They've started construction on their first nuclear power plant. It should be done between 2030 and 2032. And as of the moment, it is planned as 4 reactors to generate a total of 6 gigawatts of electricity output. They may expand it to like 5 or 6 reactors, but as of the moment, the initial plan is just 4. But we'll see if that changes with time going forward. And X all this off. All right, I'm probably going to end the stream soon because I promised I would not make it drag out as long as I did last time, and I've already been getting close to that. So this is blah 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 blah. uh, depends on which which of the fossil hydrocarbons you're referring to. And also, it depends. Are there no holdbacks? If there's no holdbacks, then that expands by quite a bit. If there's like holdbacks, like say regulatory holdbacks or something, then that constrains things. But uh, let's see, oil wise, going over the difference. Let's see, going over how much is relatively left and will continue until peaks and plateaus in different places. As I've already said, this uh, the like global oil production peak, even if it's in the backgrounds and not like completely visible because of different like production cuts by OPEC and stuff. Global oil production peak is like this decade, the like later half of this decade through the 2030s. It's basically going to kind of form like a uh, semi-oscillating plateau and will hit into like actual like decrease by the 2040s. In terms of long-term stuff, there are various sources that are quite densely loaded with liquid hydrocarbons, like the tar sands up in Alberta, the heavy oil in Venezuela, the just the Persian Gulf in general. Uh, like Saudi Arabia will be reaching the end of their plateau capability first, but like most of them are still going to be able to hold those plateaus for varying lengths of time to come because of just the sheer volume of stuff that's there. And then there's also the Russia stuff, or the Russia stuff that will be restored post internal turmoil, post in the turmoil that follows their post Ukraine collapse stuff. But all in all, there there's enough that even at the end of a global like production post peak decline, uh, oil availability or oil availability, oil output globally would still level out and maintain a consistent availability of like somewhere around 40 million barrels a day for a prolonged period after that. And then, however, the decline is likely not going to be as fast and as steep as would have initially been suspected, because we keep finding, like, especially in Brazil and offshore Guyana and stuff, we keep finding a decent bit of stuff, and there is quite a bit out there. Uh, Natural gas, equivalently wise, will kind of follow the same path, but a bit more prolonged because since gas is gas, it's gaseous, and expands and wants to leave containment in pressurized fields much more readily than liquid does, as opposed to like oil, where between 30 and 50% of the liquid in the reservoir ends up being extracted over the field's lifetime. Close to 90% of gas is able to be recovered from a field over its lifetime. So gas is a bit more prolonged. Coal, coal is effectively on human planning timescales. Coal is infinite. There is roughly at the start, there was probably around 24 or 25 trillion tons of coal. And as of now, as of this year, we have used probably a bit over like a trillion and a quarter, somewhere between a trillion and a quarter and a trillion and a half. And at the current rates, which have been dropping because of energy switches to other things, at the current rates we mine up and consume coal, it would take us over 2,000 years to go through all of it. All of the stuff that is like readily available and that we would not like expend more energy getting to than we would get out of it, at least. Then after that, there is nuclear, which is effectively infinite. There is a lot of uranium in like surface deposits to be mined, but even on top of that, there is actually more uranium than people would like to believe that is just diluted in the Earth's ocean. And we do have a chemical method that we developed recently that can extract that. We basically, I don't know if you've ever seen a pipe cleaner. Yeah, like a, go to regular images. Yeah, if you've ever seen or used a pipe cleaner, these like fuzzy things, uh, it's a thing that we have it buoyed or anchored to like the seafloor in a shallow area, and it basically looks like a giant pipe cleaner with these fuzzy things, and it has some this like special antimony compound that that will extract it like chemically draws in and like locks in uranium out of the seawater, and we like you set like one line across with several of these things, and over the course of 6 to 8 weeks, they will become full and will extract enough uranium, roughly 75 tons, or the amount that goes into a typical large power output reactor. And the actual volume of uranium in the ocean, again, on our timescales, would make this effectively limitless. Now, this is expensive, between 270 and $300 per ton, I'm sorry, per pound. However, uh, versus current uranium prices are about $70 per pound. However, that's completely meaningless. The price of uranium, like the physical cost of getting uranium, is it's almost a non-component of like the expenses of maintaining and operating a nuclear power plant. So the whole like deterrence because of the $300 per pound thing is actually kind of meaningless in terms of like we couldn't do it because it's too expensive. We won't do it for a while because mining uranium, on the Earth's surface is still way cheaper, but it is something that is there and could be done and is effectively limitless. In terms of like, we couldn't really deplete the ocean of it. Now, there is a limit likely to how much we could get out at once, since you have to, for this to work, you have to place these things in shallow water where there is a moving current, where the water is like actively moving at some speed over it. So, actually, I have a map of ocean currents. I think, where's my ocean currents map? Not those, not those. It's there. No, no. I would have thought I would have just labeled it currents. Did I label it thermohalion? I mean, that's its actual name. No. Don't tell me I moved it to like its own folder or something. Come on. All right. Okay, sorry. Looks like I moved it to its own folder somewhere. I'll have to go looking for it after. But anyways, so there are like there's a limited number of places you could put these, and you would have to space them like number of like dozens or maybe like between 50 and 100 miles apart, or something like that, to make sure that the concentration of uranium in the water by the time after having passed over one of them, by the time it reaches the next one, has like kind of reintegrated and returns to like the normal diluted concentration, so that like the next one along the chain is able to like extract the same amount. So there would be a total like limit of how much we could be extracting from the ocean via these things at once, but it would still be a massive amount. And let's see, is that What's the worst way to generate energy? Uh, Physical labor. Like the most inefficient thing is what we did, for most of our history, which is we grew food, or rather, the sun grew food for us. The sun grows food. We spend energy harvesting the food to eat, to use that energy, both to maintain our existence and then to use that energy to grow more food or hunt more food if you're hunting animals, or scavenging more food if you're gathering berries or something. And that kept us at a like ratio energy net yield of between 1.1 or between 1.5 and 2 to 1. So that was like the best we got was like 2 to 1. And that was most of the time. Uh, People started using either animal labor or slave labor to like offset the a lot of the physical workload, because like you take slaves, you can make the slave work all day and then not have them use any of their energy they get from eating on anything else other than the work. So that then like transferred over, whether slaves or animals, that transferred over some additional free energy and took us up to between 2.5 and 3 to 1, which then started seeing us, become a bit more complex. We started building like actual structures. We started being able to spend time to like experiment with stuff, develop metallurgy, Bronze Age, Iron Age. And eventually we also started getting ideas to use like water wheels. And, those helped with a lot of physical stuff. They took us up to like 3.5 to 1 kind of. However, they were locked into doing physical work and only being able to do it on site, as opposed to like being able to use that to make electricity, which can be transported via power lines to then be turned into some kind of work anywhere you want it. And then eventually we came to the 1800s, where we developed the steam engine. We not necessarily discovered, but we discovered the way we could really use coal. And that jumped society very quickly up to between 10 to 1 and 15 to 1. And eventually, the power we were able to generate from that, we were able to use to run drilling rigs to actually drill down into oil fields. And once we got into using those, especially the earliest oil fields, the ones that are onshore, conventional, are near to the surface and are under like highly pressurized sedimentary folds, and also are in a rock layer that is of high porosity, like everything stacked perfectly. Those, the fields, not society as a whole, but those fields have something of like a 200 to 1 energy yield. And many of like the fields in the Middle East, when they first start production, still have yields that are like close to that, like 120 to 1 or something like that. And then obviously, as you start changing factors, things degrade. Offshore stuff depends a lot on the depth of the water, the depth under the seabed, and then the usual stuff like what's the porosity level of the rock layer. So that can vary anywhere from as high as 60 to 1 to as low as 20 to 1. So a lot of like the near shore earlier stuff in the Gulf of Mexico was like 50 or 60 to 1. And despite the fact that it's in deeper water, a lot of the stuff offshore Guyana, just because of how preferable the geology and like the porosity levels are of the rock layers, a lot of that stuff is still like 40 or 45 to 1. And then when you start going unconventional, that's when it starts like going further down. Like shale and tight oil is, uh, in the teens and sometimes in the 20s if the reservoir is really good, like the Eagle Ford and Permian, at least in their earliest days. And then from there, you like go down further where you get like heavy oil and bitumen sands and stuff. And that goes down to like between 6 to 1 and 10 to 1. And the lowest liquid hydrocarbon yield would be from Kerosene. Say if we extracted the stuff in the Green River Formation in Wyoming, that would only be like between 4 to 1 and 7 to 1. But in collective, also, and the use of liquid fuel instead of steam shovels. Although steam shovels are epic and they are really cool. The use of like diesel fuel vehicles and even power line powered mining vehicles for mining coal. Once we start switching over to those over the early 20th century, that then brought the net yield for coal up from like 15 or 20 to 1 up to 40 to 1 or as high as 50 to 1, because the like net amount of energy needed to be used to mine is less when you're using liquid fuel for the vehicles than if you're using steam to run the vehicles. So there's like everything stacked. Uh, we went societally in total up to somewhere close to 50 to 1 as like a total net energy yield. Uh, so the what we refer to now, or what I refer to at least as the like prosperity age, the 50s through the early 2000s, when so much was like so cheap and so widely available to like people on as a societal whole on like a scale that would never have been imagined. That was us riding on a net energy yield high of like in excess of 45 to 1. As of now, we have we dropped down to at the lowest point we were I think 34 to 1. However, with the advent of a bunch of additional stuff, especially like additional conventional offshore stuff, offshore Brazil, and now all the stuff offshore Guyana, and the upsurgence in production from Iraq, from all of the fields that had remained untouched for so long, that's entered production for the first time, that are like the original high yield conventional Persian Gulf type of fields, and a bunch of other stuff in other energy field areas. Total has actually pushed us from 34 back up to 38 to 1, at least as a broad estimate for our net total societal energy yield. But yeah, the grand like downturn economically that we've taken over the last 15 to 20 years was a slide from like 50 to 1, or at least from the upper 40s down towards like 35 or 34. Now, over the last number of years, we bumped back up a little bit in total, back up to like 38, maybe 37. However, a lot of that downsliding damage is kind of already done, and you can then like obviously kind of draw out the math in not like literally calculations wise, but just in a general idea of economically, both in a broader sense and for yourself, how things would/will play out further based on us at any particular points, like sliding further down in a total societal net yield level. And like the reasons for like the downslide are now, although oil production has like after the first oil peak in the mid to late 2000s at around like 83 million barrels a day, obviously, yes, we still then have increased production after that and are up around 101 or 102 right now. We would be over 103 if it weren't for the OPEC production cuts at the moment. The like reason for the downslide still being a thing is because we've gone from almost all percentage wise of, if for just using oil as an example, almost all percentage wise of that the oil production being from like regular and offshore stuff over to now uh, close to uh, well, actually, now that when you add in China's and Argentina's shale production, 11 million barrels a day out of that 101 or 102 million barrels a day is now from shale. Another 4.5 million barrels a day is from bitumen up in Canada. Uh, so, and then another 1 million is from bitumen in Venezuela. And then you have stuff that has reached low yields simply because it's from vastly declining fields, like in Ecuador, or a lot of Russia stuff. So that's been one of the primary backdrop reasons for the decline is the ratio change of how much of the total production is what type of liquid hydrocarbon resource and how low the individual yield of those particular components of it are. So, like, that's what's factoring into everything. And I think I just spent 20 minutes going over that, which is probably longer than what you were initially hoping for or expecting. But anyway, so as I said, that's probably going to be the end of this one, as I've run over when I promised this would end. Thank you, Wills, for the $10, and thank you anybody who's on Patreon, obviously. So I'll stick around for like 30 more seconds, maybe, just see if anyone had anything to ask or say, or if another super chat pops up or something. But after that, I will be going off. And actually, I'll chug some water in the meantime. Take a look, maybe. I don't know, just gaze at prices real quick while I wait to see if anybody says anything. Oil, really not where you should be. Silver finally starting to go up. Copper has been moving slightly back up. Anybody? No. Okay. I'll assume that's going to be everything. All right. That is it.